Good morning, young Groms. Today we are going to be reviewing my 6.5 Stealth from Surfboards. The whole story behind this board is that I really wanted a nice low rocker kind of groveler board that would be like an all-around kind of workhorse, because I was going to Iceland and I needed something that would float me, and it was my first trip there. I was going to be wearing a 6.5 mil wetsuit. I was going to be wearing 9 mil boots and 5 mil mittens, so I wanted to make sure that I had enough volume. I've been looking at this shape from Tim. This is a stock model called the Stealth from Surfboards, and as you guys see, it's got this awesome double diamond tail. And what this does, it breaks the rail line a little bit of a regular swallowtail, because if this was a giant swallowtail, it would go all the way out and you'd have so much rail, and then you'd have this big open space. But with this double diamond tail, you have a little more foam back here, gives you a little more pivot, and then you still get some of the benefits of a swallowtail where you can sink the tail a little bit. So that's the whole purpose of a swallowtail, is to be able to sink the tail so you can turn. So this just makes it, I would say, a little more floaty, a little more drivey than a regular swallowtail, so you don't have to commit to having this big empty space in the back of your board. And so Tim's regular stock board comes in a 4-fin setup. He really likes it as a quad, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but the reason why I have 5 fins here is because I love thrusters. I am a thruster guy through and through. Black Beauty, you know, one of my favorite boards. Dane Reynolds neckbeard, stuff like that. Thruster all the way. So I was telling him, man, I want a thruster, and he's like, no you don't, this is a quad. So in the end we settled in between and we did a 5-fin option. So thank you, Timmy, because that was really important. So the dimensions on this board is 6'5", 21 1/4 wide, and 3 1/16 thick. And as you can see, it's got a very beefy rail and very flat deck, low rocker in the nose, low rocker in the tail, but it's not absolutely flat. There's a good amount of rocker, but it's still low. So I would just say it's a really good rocker profile, and it's got epoxy construction with this Australian carbon fiber, and this is really cool. I've seen Tim do this on some other boards, and I asked for this on mine, as these are just vertically laid strips of carbon, and he hooked me up with some carbon on the bottom. This is more structural. The carbon on the top is more of like integrity and a little cosmetic too, to be honest. But he also did a beautiful orange resin swirl, and we went with orange because when I was in Iceland, I knew I wanted to be able to be like seen, and you know, it could be pretty crazy out there. The reason why I went with something so big is because I was wearing a wetsuit, like I said, and I wanted to make sure I had enough float. This is about 45 liters exactly. I think it might be 45.2 or something, but it's a very big board. And it was awesome riding this. Like, the paddle power is amazing. But I would say I had a little too much volume. It's got a very nice, subtle single to double with some nice double right here, which I really like that. I really like a good double concave. And yeah, I was excited. I went with, a lot of times I give Tim and like a lot of people give their shapers like all these crazy like parameters to meet, but this is a board I kind of just sent him the dimensions and I said, make it totally stock. Like, I just trust you for everything, like the tail thickness, the rails, whatnot, and he really delivered. So I went up and got this board in January, so about 2 months before my trip, and we took it out at some Rhode Island point breaks. We're here before sunrise. The right is pumping. I just saw a sick one. I'm on the new Stealth 6.5. It was so awesome. Like, it was so drivey, it was windy, but you know, it's a big board, so it held in the wind and everything. Super thick. Probably didn't need to go 3 1/16. When we were deciding on it, I had it 3, like the dimensions were 3, 3, 3, and then like a day before he sent the order out, I was like, let's do 3 1/16, which I definitely could have got away with 3 because this is such a thick rail. But I was like catching so many waves up in Rhode Island. I was ripping on it. Really drivey board. As you see, the rails are pretty straight, and this helps break it a little bit. Like, you know, like I said, it breaks the rail line up a little bit, but yeah, the rails are so straight, so I was flying. It's low rocker, and that's what I love about a shortboard. The last board we did together, I kind of said, I was like, oh, I want to do something crazy rockered out, but that isn't what I like. Like my whole life, I've just liked low rocker surfboards and whatnot. So I'm stoked to get back on a low rocker shortboard. I rode it as a thruster my first session. I was talking to Timmy and like, oh, I really want a thruster. So him and I were debating on whether we were going to go 3-fin or quad. And I was like, oh no, I definitely like it as a thruster. Like the first session I was like really ripping on it, pushing on the rail super hard. And I was like, all right, it's a thruster. I shouldn't have even got the 5-fin option. But then I took it home and I was riding it at like beach breaks and stuff. And I noticed that it felt kind of like sticky, especially because the back fin on a thruster kind of went over this empty space a little bit. So it was pretty weird. And it worked great in those Rhode Island point breaks when I was really laying it on rail and pushing as hard as I could. But when I needed to do some like directional changing and stuff, when I was surfing beach breaks at my house, the thruster was not the best option. I actually conceded to Tim and was like, I like the quad better for beach break waves. And I was riding at beach breaks near my house and I just really liked it. Was more maneuverable, and when I was riding it, I would put my foot all the way back here to do like a back turn, to do like a top turn or something backside, and it would really nicely go up and hit the lip in a quad. Whereas in a thruster, it felt like I was just designed to do cutbacks. Then I got to Iceland, and Iceland was crazy. First session we surfed that slab that was like super kind of like far out at sea, deep water, and then we surfed this left point that was like, it was weird. It was like good, but I had no markers to line up on. Since I was surfing alone, it was a spot I'd never been to. So I had no markers to be like, oh, this is where I sit. And I think that's where the paddle power was this board's greatest strength. Being 45 liters and low rocker, like I had no problem catching waves, and it was a little sketchy to be out there alone. So I was stoked to have like a bigger board with me and just feel more confident on it. Then obviously gets to the bulk of this review is gonna be the epic right point break in the north of Iceland that we scored. This board was like designed for this wave. I was so pumped. It was like super fast, super low rocker, and that's what I like to do. I like to zoom into the flats, I like to draw out my turns, and that was accentuated because I was actually riding these. So I was riding this thruster when I was surfing that point in Iceland, and you can see these are like super raked. They have a ton of rake back, so they really draw out your turns. And I got these fins originally for my other witcher that I had all the rocker, because I kind of wanted to balance it out, where when you have a lot of rocker on the board, it makes it really pivoty. So I got raked fins to maybe give that board some more drive. But this was kind of just overpowered, having a low rocker, thick rail, and super straight outline board with raked fins. So you can see in these turns they're really drawn out, but that also gave me the ability to do those super cool, like fast drawn out turns with so much drive. Probably could have used the neutral template if I went back and had to do it all over again, but these have a little bit of flex in them too. Like they're pretty stiff, but I could really feel the flex in the second part of the cutback, and you can kind of see that the way I was setting up my cutbacks on this board, I was trying to really wrap around the second section, and that's actually where my energy was focused. I wasn't trying to throw a big spray out the back. I was actually trying to kind of coast the first part of the turn, and then the second part I was trying to really come in and, you know, have my speed through the middle of that cutback and then wrap it around. So yeah, I mean, like when you're in perfect waves like I was, you're probably not gonna need as much foam. So like the board felt big because I was at a wave where I didn't need to paddle at all. It was super easy to line up because it broke right next to the beach, and the waves were just perfect. So the board felt a little big given all those things, but if I was like at a beach break at home or at that left point break I had surfed the day before, this is the perfect board because I needed to paddle and get places and whatnot. And yeah, I was just super stoked on that. Super stoked on this board. Next thing you can expect from me in this board is, if I'm not riding this one, I would love to test out a 6'2" by 21 5/8 by 2 7/8. I believe those are the dimensions. That would be an awesome board, just a little shorter of a package, same amount of volume roughly, and yeah, I just gotta trust the shaper and, you know, go on the stock dimensions And that's gonna be it for this board review. Iceland was epic. As you guys know, I scored the best waves of my life. Wouldn't trade it for anything. If I had to go back and do it all over again, pick the same board, the same place, on the same day. And as always, we will see you on the next swell.